Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? Those of you that I can see on the computer? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. So welcome today to our class of 2025 parent information session. My name is Stephanie Worthley, and I am the K through 12 guidance department chair for the Medfield Public Schools. So we're thrilled that many of you could join us today. I know sometimes during the day, at noon is a tough time to break away for a minute and sit down and follow along on a webinar. At the same time, we used to host this type of meeting first thing in the morning as a parent coffee, and we are hoping that at some point we will be back together in person someday. But for the time being, we're happy to be able to have the technology to use these tools to still be able to provide you with as much information as we can. And this information is being recorded and will be shared with all of our freshman parents later this afternoon. So some of the information we wanted to share with parents today, we want to make sure that everybody is familiar with the guidance staff, that you know who to reach out if you have questions. We want to go over some information about graduation requirements, transcripts, GPA, standardized testing, all these types of things that will just be important to be aware of now that your sons and daughters are freshmen in high school. We had the opportunity to share much of this same information with our freshmen a week or so ago during flex period. The way our new schedule works is now with our flex period. It allows us, the guidance staff, to have opportunities to meet with all of our students by caseload. So every student met with their own individual guidance counselor in a group setting to go over this information as well. So, our main goal for our freshmen is really to focus on their transition high school. We want to help them feel acclimated and comfortable here at the high school. So really our focus is just getting them used to what the expectations are here at Medfield High School. So we want them to start becoming advocates for themselves, to utilize their guidance counselor, to feel that they can approach their teachers, and really start to building skills that will offer them some success here at the high school. So as I said, my name is Stephanie. So if your student's last name begins with A through B-O, I will work with your sons and daughters for the next 4 years of high school. Elise DeLuzio is here today, and her caseload is B-R through G. Ann Lodge, she works with students' last names H through L. Amanda Patton works with students' last names M through Q, and then Mr. Ornberg works with students' last names R through Z. And I realize the way my screen is, I'm not sure if everybody can see. And then Mr. Becker, Russ Becker, he is our school adjustment counselor, and he's going to talk a little bit about what his role is as well. So several years ago, Medfield High School partnered with a program called Challenge Success. And this program is actually out of Stanford University in California. And we were fortunate enough to send a team of staff members, administrators. I had the opportunity to go, teachers, parents, students as well, out to California to really talk with our school about what does success mean for our students and our community, and how do we define that, and what are the things that we feel are really important to help our students feel success here at school. And one of the great features that they gave us were some tips to really help with the transition and helping students really be able to find ways to thrive and feel success during high school. So a couple of things I just wanted to share here. There's 10 points that Challenge Success kind of put it out as back to school tips for students. And some of them are really great. And I know, as a counselor and an educator, and then also as a parent, I try to kind of keep these things in mind as well as I'm talking to my own children. For example, when your child comes home, ask your child how was their day, learn anything interesting, ask them about friends, and not immediately focus on how did you do on that math test. And I know that sometimes can be challenging when that is a focal point of school, assessments and tests and quizzes and so forth, but really try to focus on the learning and the good things that happen during the day, and instead of kind of interrogating students on how they did on an assessment the minute they walk in the door. Another point is to resist the urge to correct errors on your child's homework. I'm sure you've already been through high school. I've already been through high school. This is your child's turn to learn the information and produce work that's theirs. Even with that, it's important, to think about what the grades look like at school, and I know there's a lot of conversation. Term one has just ended yesterday, and there's a lot of conversation here about report cards and grades, and report cards will be distributed to students next week. And, as we said to your son and daughter last week when we met with them, this is kind of their first term of high school. They'll have 4 terms each year of high school. This is their first grading period. There's still a lot of time, a lot of room for improvement. If your son or daughter comes home with, a grade that they're not happy with, that's okay. It's a learning process here, to keep working hard to figure out what it is that a student needs to do to, maybe get that grade up. But I think the important part is to really focus on what's been learned this term, and not necessarily what the grade is. Challenge Success provides a lot of information for families on downtime, playtime, and family time. We've done some work with students over the years where they map out kind of a time management tool where they think about how many hours a day that they're in school every day, how many hours a day they're spending either playing a sport or at theater or whatever their activity might be, how many hours a day that then they're spending doing homework. It's interesting how many hours a day that they might be using their screen time, whether it's their phone or their iPad. So just to really focus on making sure that kids have downtime in their day and also family time. All of these things are really critical for a student's overall well-being. There's a lot of research out there about technology and trying to create some time that's technology free to have conversations with your sons and daughters without the interruption of technology. One of the things we're going to talk about today is really encouraging you to work and collaborate with your child's teachers. We really want to encourage you to feel like you can have conversations with teachers. We want you to reach out to teachers if you have questions. The more communication, the better between yourselves, your child's guidance counselor, the teacher can only help the student kind of in the long run. As I was talking a little bit before about the tests and the quizzes and not helping, doing this, your sons and daughters' homework, one of the things we talk about here is that the high school is really a safe place for small failures, right? We want students to be able to make mistakes here, kind of in a safe zone where there isn't, hopefully too large a consequence for that. We want students to experience small failures so that way they can learn to be resilient. So if your child forgets their homework or they forget their field hockey stick or something, try to fight the urge to, pack up and bring it right to the school if you can. Try to let the student kind of figure out how to navigate that for themselves. Talking a little bit before about the downtime, playtime, and family time. Another thing we talk a lot with our students about is the importance of sleep. We've done a lot of research over the past 3 years through Challenge Success about how important it is that our students are getting enough sleep. And we realize that certainly pre-pandemic, this work was done, but that our students are not getting enough sleep that they need. And then there is a correlation between the lack of sleep and depression and anxiety. So we feel like that's another area that, we try to talk with our students about to make sure that when we're talking about time management, that they are factoring in how many hours of sleep they need every night as well. And then the last few things, just to really, really listen to your child. I know the teenage years can be hard, and sometimes students are telling you something without saying anything. So, if they come home and they say, I hate school, really try to figure out what that means, like why they actually hate school, what's going on. Really try to look for those nonverbal cues as well of what might be happening, because we all know that teenagers don't love to always talk and open up with, especially with their parents. So sometimes it can be hard to kind of figure out what's going on. I also think oftentimes the best time to talk to kids is in the car, when you don't actually have to sit down and look at each other, but when you're driving side by side and just having a conversation, hopefully you would be able to find out what's going on. And then, Medfield High School is a really kind of thriving community. Our school day doesn't really end at 2:07. Our kids are active here. And one thing Mr. Parga typically always says at events is, if your child is going home at 2:07 and is not involved in any clubs or theater or athletics or anything, please let us know. We want to make sure that our students are involved in areas that they are interested in, to start to develop their strengths, whether it's art or whatever the case might be. We want students to feel that they're involved with something here at school, and not to do things for the sake of a college resume to impress a college, but to really find meaningful activities that students are interested in. And so when we met with your sons and daughters last week as well, like, we talked about different clubs they can become involved in. We had our club fair a couple weeks ago. I know our athletics are huge. Our theater program has a show coming up. So there really is a lot of opportunity for our students to be involved. And then really sometimes that's the best part of high school. So we want our kids to feel comfortable here, feel like this is their school, and really make it a meaningful 4 years. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Becker to introduce himself. Mr. Becker, are you there?
I certainly am. Can you hear me okay? Fabulous. Thank you so much. So I am Mr. Becker. I am the school adjustment counselor here. I realize that as your child has sort of matriculated through the Medfield school system, the likelihood is you've been able to familiarize yourself with the term guidance counselor. However, the term adjustment counselor is often new for many people when they enter the high school. If you have worked in other schools previously, you may know me as a school social worker. And when I'm not perfecting the casual lean as depicted in my picture there, I'm working one-on-one with many of our students here to help manage their mental health and social emotional needs. I give this talk every year, and I think this year especially, it's more pertinent than ever, because unsurprisingly, after the upheaval of the past year and a half, we're already recognizing that the degree of need that our students are presenting is anecdotally higher than it's been, and the severity of that need is already a little bit higher than we would expect as well. So I like to get out there, I like to put my name out there and make myself available to all of you should you ever recognize that your child needs additional help, or should you have additional questions about either your child or a friend as well. My email can be linked at the end as well, but at any point, please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to talk. I'm always happy to answer any questions. An additional part of my role here as well is I run the Signs of Suicide program for the high school. You may remember your child got the first iteration of the Signs of Suicide program in 7th grade. We get to them December of this year, and then towards the end of their senior year. This presentation is slightly different from the 7th grade version, where that 7th grade version really served as just an introduction to the topic as a whole. The 9th grade version is tailored more to the 9th grade age group, where we once again go over some of the signs, some of the symptoms, but we also talk a lot about how your student or a friend of your student could get help should they need it throughout their times here. What we know, unfortunately, is that depression is a relatively significant issue and can be a relatively common concern for our students. So it's been a very effective tool for us to get in, speak with your children, make sure that they're aware of some of the signs and symptoms. And oftentimes we'll get people connected with help and connected with resources and supports that can help make their experience here better long term. Should you have time, should you have questions, should you have concerns, once again, please feel free to reach out to me at any point in time. I'm always happy to discuss, and we can go through the program as well if you're worried if it is appropriate for your student too.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elise DeLuzio, and I am the guidance counselor for students, freshmen with last names BR through G. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is that we do as high school guidance counselors. So we really sort of organize our framework of support in 3 primary areas. And for those of you who are calling in and don't have the visual, those 3 areas are academics, future planning, and social emotional. So within the academic area, this may include things like helping your child with their schedule. One of the big pieces that we work on every year is in the spring, talking about classes for next year. And of course, as your child progresses through high school, they may find certain areas of interest. They may start thinking about possible college majors, and we can kind of help guide them towards what courses in terms of subject may be most interesting. And of course, talking about course levels and overall balance and making sure that they have a healthy balance within their schedule. Academics may also include, speaking of the levels, a student who feels that they're in a class, but it's far too easy, or they're feeling overwhelmed and thinking about possibly making a change. And of course, if a student does feel they need extra support within a class, we can help connect them with a peer tutor. We can help them figure out how to meet with their teacher during the flex free periods or after school. Thinking about future planning, we have curriculum that we deliver to students each year that I'll talk a little bit about in our next slide. And in terms of the social emotional area, this may be something that is, your child is having a really tough day and they need support sort of in the immediate sense, or it might be scheduled conversations that they know something's going on sort of long term or something comes up. And it may be something where, as Russ Becker just spoke about, it's either sort of a short term and we're assisting, or perhaps we are connecting them with Russ or looking into scheduling additional support outside of school. So I mentioned future planning in our curriculum. So in terms of points of contact with your child this year, we have some group meetings, and I know Stephanie Worthley mentioned we really enjoyed meeting with all of the 9th graders a week or so ago and talking about the transition and sharing a lot of this information with them. We will have another group meeting about halfway through the year, and we'll start to think about, crazy as it seems, start to think about planning for next year and their classes. And then individual check-ins. So we really enjoyed meeting with your child last June. We went over to Blake and had some quick individual meetings, and we want a chance to follow up with each of our students individually this fall, if we haven't already, to kind of see how everything is going and whether there is any area in which we can provide support. And then in terms of as needed, again, that can kind of fall into just a student has something they want to speak with us about, and they can schedule a meeting with us through the MyFlex Learning app, or email us to set up an alternate time. So when can students see us? They can see us through those flex periods. And for those of you still adjusting to our new schedule, as I know a lot of us are, those end up being about 200 minutes of free time for students every week. So it's 3 separate periods, although the day varies, about an hour each. And students can do work, they can sign up with teachers, or of course they can sign up to meet with their guidance counselor. So there is an app that they all have on their phones that they can use. For something quick, we encourage students to come see us during their extended passing time, which is about 10 minutes long, or on their way in between classes. Of course, if a student is having a situation that is urgent or is in a crisis situation, we would want them to just drop in, and we would be sure to be available to support them. And we're also available after school by appointment, and would encourage students to email us to set up a time then. And that being said, I am going to pass it over to Eric Ornberg.
Thanks, Mr. Luzio. My name is Eric Warnberg. I'm one of the guidance counselors here at the high school. I'm going to talk a little bit about graduation requirements. We talked to the students a little bit about how many credits they need to accumulate and how many units of each subject that they need. And I think this is important information as mentioned earlier, that really comes into play around course selection time. Our job as counselors is to kind of keep an eye on this to make sure students each year are fulfilling their credit requirements and their unit requirements. So English, you need 20 credits, which is basically 4 years of English. For history, science, and math, you need at least 3 years. Science, it has to be a lab science. Most students walking around Medfield leave here having taken biology, physics, and chemistry. For history, same thing, 15 credits, 3 years through basically through the end of junior year. And math is still 15 credits, which is 3 years, although I would say a vast majority, over 99% of Medfield students are probably taking 4 years of math. That keeps them eligible for acceptance and to the Massachusetts State College programs. They expect students to have 4 years of math. Wellness has changed in the last 5 years, where it's now offered at the grade level, wellness 9, 10, 11, and 12. So students take 10 credits, but they're expected to take half a year or a semester's worth of wellness in each grade that they're at the high school. World language is also a 2-year requirement. I would say a good number of Medfield students will take 3 years or 4 years of a world language, and those 2 years have to be in the same subject. So you can't take a year of Latin and then a year of French. There are some students with learning differences that may qualify for world language waivers. So if your student might have a reading-based learning disability, that's something that you could talk about with a guidance counselor or a learning specialist. Students need to take a full year of visual or applied arts. For some reason, students get very concerned about this to make sure that they've met this requirement over a 4-year period. It's usually one of their electives that falls in the art category. Our business electives, foods counts in there, journalism, yearbook, creative writing, and speech. So again, most kids by the end of freshman year have fulfilled this requirement. A typical garden variety Medfield student will graduate with 140 credits if they have passed every class and taken a full 7-class caseload each year. The minimum to graduate credit-wise is 115. So there's a buffer in there in case a student does fail, if they have to withdraw from a class, if there are some other extenuating circumstances. Oftentimes new students moving to the district, we have to do a little bit more of the math and legwork to make sure that they have all the core requirements and the credit count. So the transcript, and we're going to show you an example of this in a moment, but basically this is the permanent record. In about a week, you're going to get your student's first report card. You're going to see what the term grade is. You're probably going to get a couple of comments added on to that. And report cards have basically become temporary updates, very similar to progress reports. The transcript is going to show simply the name of the course, the level of the course, and at the end of the year, what the final grade in the course might be. The final grade for some students in half-year electives will show up in February, and that will be listed in the final grade column. And for students enrolled in the full year courses, what will be listed on there in June will be what the final grade is after 4 quarters and potentially a percentage of a final exam added in there. The other thing that's on the transcript is the grade point averages. Right now, freshmen do not have GPAs. They will get their first round of what a grade point average is in February at the semester break. That's when we update grade point averages. And the scale is basically this 4.0 scale that we work off of. The transcript is a permanent record, and it is something that is kept and requested quite often after graduation. We keep that on file for 60 years. A lot of times students will come back after a year or two if they're transferring to a college or entering a different type of a program, requesting the transcript. So that is certainly something that we hold on to for a long number of years. And it's amazing to me how far out sometimes people will be from graduation that will still call and request transcripts. So this is a copy of an official Medfield High School transcript. This would basically be a version that a senior would have. You can see final grades from 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. This is a good example of a student that withdrew from a course junior year. And you can see that the final grade listed on there is a W. The GPAs, both weighted and unweighted, are listed below. And I'm going to talk about the weighting in a moment. The credits earned through junior year for this student was 105. And as it's listed there, credits needed to graduate is 115. The transcript also talks a little bit about the grading scale that we have. This is much different than it was years ago, where we had each of the term grades listed on there. I think this is a much cleaner version. So if a student does have a tough term or a tough semester, it can get folded into the final grade. So as of right now, your freshmen have blank slates. There's nothing on there at this point, and there won't be anything on there until February, when their first semester electives close out and they get their first round of final grades in those half-year courses. So we did talk to your sons and daughters a little bit about grade point averages. It's interesting, we take letters and turn them into numbers up here at the high school, but the grade point average is basically, we give a numerical value to each of the grades that students earn and add them up and divide by 7, and that's what their GPA would be. Oftentimes, when seniors look back at 9th grade, they say, man, I didn't take things seriously, and my GPA in 9th grade really isn't kind of representative of who I am as a student. And I think it's very important to realize that all grades count equally. No, there's not more weight given to junior year, though the myth, junior year is the only year that counts, is one that we continue to hear. Everything counts equally. So where students go term 2, I think will help set them up for the best possible version of their freshman year come final grades in June. In terms of GPA, we give a 0.8 bump to students that take honors and AP courses. So if your child is in an honors English class and they're getting a B, the unweighted version of that is a 3.0, and the weighted version would be a 3.8. And that's why there are 2 GPAs that are listed on the transcript. We do not take points away or give a lower point value for students that are in C2 level courses. So Medfield, again, it's a 4.0 scale. I think it's modeled somewhat after what UMass Amherst, how they kind of process GPAs, and that honors and AP designation provides the bump. So a student, the eternal question, is it better to get a B in an honors class or an A in a C1 course? You can sometimes do the math on that. But if a student's even getting a C in an honors class, it would be the equivalent of a B- in terms of the weighted GPA. So as far as standardized tests go, and this is certainly a landscape we keep a close eye on from the national level with SAT and ACT, but for 9th graders, they'll be taking the science MCAS in June. Medfield students historically do very well on the state assessments. Sophomore year, about a month and a half ago, we gave sophomores the option to take the pre-ACT, which is not required, but it's just a very low stakes introduction into standardized testing, and the kids take a little bit of an interest inventory, which is helpful for those score reports, which we'll be sending home at some point later on this fall. That's usually in October. We offer the pre-ACT, and then in the spring, sophomores will finish out their MCAS with the ELA and the math. As we get into junior year, again, for a garden variety Medfield High School junior, we would recommend the PSAT in October. And then after the first of the year, we encourage families and students to map out when they want to take the real SAT or the real ACT. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole with that, but there is certainly a larger number of colleges and universities that have gone test optional, which is taking away a little bit of the high stakes testing anxiety, which is always nice to see. Students that enroll in an AP course, junior or senior year, in order to complete the requirements of the course, will sit for the AP exams, which are usually held in the first 2 or the middle 2 weeks in May. And then senior year, if students want to follow up with an SAT or an ACT, they could certainly do that. And again, those enrolled in an AP course will be taking that AP exam at some time a few weeks before they graduate.
Hi,
At this
everyone.
point-
Thank you.
Go-
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Lodge. As we've sort of been talking about, and you guys have seen through the transcript what we show in terms of the academic piece, we just want to make sure that all of our students are aware of the resources that are there to support them as they navigate their high school journey. This is information that your students are probably well versed in at this point, and we reviewed with them again when we met them, but want to make sure that you're all aware as well. So during the flex period that all students have access to, that Elise was talking about, students have the opportunity to use their time as they see fit, whatever works most appropriately for them. One of the great benefits that we're seeing this year with this flex time that meets 5 times in an 8-day cycle is that students are able to have really easy access to meeting with their teachers for extra help right during the school day. So through this MyFlex Learning app, students have the opportunity to check in with teachers, to flex in, to talk to a teacher about a test that maybe they have coming up. Or if they've been out sick and missed a lab potentially in a class, maybe they can meet with their biology teacher. Teachers also have the opportunity to pull students into their flex if they need to connect with them about anything, any upcoming assignments, or want to check in with them about any academic content. In addition to that extra help with teachers and certainly the opportunity to meet with Mr. Becker or any of the guidance counselors during that MyFlex learning time, students do also have the opportunity to visit several other resources that they might not be as well versed in quite yet. We do have a writing center here at the high school. It's really great. It's staffed by English teachers. And I think as students progress throughout high school, it's an area that they will probably use more and more as they get throughout their years here through writing papers, everything from the brainstorming stages of a writing assignment all the way through editing and the final supports. Students are able to sign up for an appointment during their flex period. They're able to see 2 students during each flex throughout the course of a cycle. So if a student has an upcoming writing assignment in their English class or their history class and would like a little bit of support, they should definitely look to sign up for the Writing Center during their MyFlex learning time. We also have something here that's offered on 2 of our days, our day 3 and day 8 during the flex period, and it's called the Academic Success Center. And it's staffed by an educator who is there to help support the students with all of their study and organizational skills, to really take a look at their executive functioning and sort of do an overall assessment with them about where they might need additional support. So it's not content related support. It's more taking a look at how a student is currently functioning and preparing for study skills and upcoming tests, and maybe following up with their assignments and what might they want to try moving forward to meet with success in their academic areas. So this is something that we're continuing to work with the freshmen and all students as they're getting used to this flex time to really utilize the time well and take advantage of it for meeting with their teachers and getting a little additional support as they move throughout the course of the year. Another area that support is offered for all students is actually through peer tutors. So the guidance office maintains a list of peers, generally sophomores, juniors, and seniors, who feel like they have a strength in an academic subject area and are looking to share their expertise with their peers. So the peer tutors is a completely volunteer opportunity, but we do maintain that list, and we have a large number of students on there right there who are willing to tutor in specific academic subject areas, and a number of those students as well who are also willing to help students with things like their time management and with their organization and with their study skills. I think this is a great opportunity for kids to connect with one another as well, particularly because these students have lived the curriculum that your sons and daughters are experiencing currently and have found success in these areas. So if your child feels like they might need some additional support, they should always first and foremost make sure they're connecting with their teacher for that support. But if they'd like a little extra on top of that, connecting with a peer tutor is a great option, and we can certainly help all students do that should they be interested. And then finally, one additional resource that we wanted to make you aware of is this MHS. It's a Frequently Asked Questions Center. It's available online. I think everyone should have had access to it from the beginning of the year, but when we share this presentation out, we can certainly send the link to this site as well. And it's a really, really helpful site as you're helping to support your child at home. There's all sorts of information on this FAQs center. So everything from the bell schedule, you'll have monthly calendars on here, so you know what day of the week it is for your child, or your child has easy access to that at home, what periods are running on any given day, what time those classes are. In addition to that, there's actually great information as well about Google Classroom, which is something that all of the teachers are using to post assignments and share information with the students in their classes. So there's Google Classroom tips on there that you can view, or your child can view, or you can view together, about checking for due dates for assignments, controlling email notifications, how to hand in work. There's a whole section on family tips for using Google as well. And finally, there's also a daily announcements section on here. So if your child maybe missed the announcements in the morning, or knows maybe that there was a meeting coming up, but they didn't hear all of the information or need a refresher, they can link directly to the daily announcements right here in this FAQs center and see all of that historical information from day to day about what's going on in the high school outside of the academic setting as well. So I think these are just some great resources that it's important for all families to be aware of that we have here at the high school as you're helping to support your sons and daughters over the next several years.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Patton. It's nice to have you all here. I'm going to talk a little bit about extracurricular activities that are offered at the high school. So hopefully all of your children got a chance to attend the club fair that we had in September. But I wanted to let you know that if your child is still looking for a club to join, there is a site where students can check out all of the different clubs and learn the names of the advisor for each of the clubs and just get a little bit more information. There are all kinds of activities ranging from like cooking to movies to business clubs. So anything that they have an interest in, hopefully they'd be able to find through our club list. Every year, we also have some students that are interested in starting their own clubs. So if your child has a specific hobby or interest or passion, and they want to see if others want to jump on board and create their own club, we certainly welcome and encourage that. So definitely have your child check in with us if that's something they want to pursue. I want to highlight a little bit about one of our clubs, the MHS Theater Society. So this is our drama club. They do a fall play, which is coming up in mid-November, a musical in the spring, and then later on in the year, the seniors write and direct their own one acts. So lots of different opportunities for students to get involved in different kinds of shows. I also just want to highlight that this is a really great organization in that the students and the advisor for this club are just incredibly welcoming. We have students from all 4 grades participating in all different social groups. And if your child is maybe having some difficulty kind of getting involved or making friends, this is just a really inclusive place to be. It's totally fine if your child is not an actor or a singer or a dancer. There are lots of different roles that come along with the Theater Society, like, working on the lighting or the set design or painting, advertising the shows and making posters and things like that. So this is definitely one to check out. And we've linked the theater link here if you want to take a look and see if getting involved in one of the shows would be a good fit. So this is just a great opportunity for students with all different types of interests. A little bit about athletics. So you can see the different sports that we offer throughout the year. There's a link here in the slideshow to get registered for any of the sports. I think winter registration is currently open. So if your child would like to get involved, definitely check out this site and make sure you filled out what you need to in order to participate. And the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to Stephanie is I feel like, freshman year is really a time to kind of get adjusted to things and do a lot of self-reflection about how things are going. Obviously the last year and a half has been kind of a strange circumstance. And this year, now that things are sort of back to normal, I think a lot of students are really reflecting on what's important to them, how school is going, how activities are going. I think some kids feel like they need to be involved in a lot of different things. And I just want to let you all know that it's not the number of activities that's what's most important. It's really about doing what you love, doing what you enjoy, and making sure you're connected to something outside of just your academics. So, as term one is ending and those term one grades are coming out, I think it would, be a good time to have a conversation about, okay, how are things going academically? How are things going outside of school? And, what changes do we want to make moving forward? If you have a student who is, doing lots of different activities and has a lot of interest and is really involved, that's wonderful. And that does work for some kids. But, maybe asking that question, do you feel like you have too much on your plate, and kind of helping them say no to things if that's something that is difficult for them. So again, just a time to self-reflect and just, making sure that they're involved in something, but not feeling like they need to overcommit themselves. It's really about finding that balance between, academic time, activity time, and downtime, like Stephanie was talking about. And I think I will turn it over to Stephanie.
Thanks, Amanda. I failed to mention at the beginning to please use the Q&A if you have questions. And I would encourage you now to do so if some of the information we went over has left a lingering question in your mind. Please feel free to throw it in the Q&A in the chat there. And we will answer some of those questions live on the webinar in a moment. But I do want to mention the communication tools that are available to you. There's a lot of information that comes out from the high school. Certainly the Monday news flash email that gets sent out from Maura Fitzgerald always has tons of information in it that really tells you about what's happening at the high school. It tells you a lot about our culture here, a lot about the things that are going on, mostly outside of the classroom. Your teachers are really working with your students on kind of organizing students through Google Classroom and, putting in assignments and due dates and working on the calendars and things of that nature, where the news flash is really going to give you information about things from the guidance office, different clubs, activities that are coming up, things from the athletic department, maybe the yearbook. Anything that any staff member feels like is newsflash worthy that parents can access will be submitted there. So I would totally encourage you to even quickly, every Monday night when you get the email, to quickly scroll through and see what information's been included there. So as I mentioned, your teachers using Google Classroom. Google Classroom, what I feel like is really for the students to use to be able to access their assignments, whereas Aspen is really a tool for the grading system. So Aspen's where you can access your son and daughter's schedule, their grades, their assignments, their attendance, things like that. If you see things on Aspen or Google Classroom that you have questions about, please feel free to email either your guidance counselor or the teachers directly. We're really trying to encourage open lines of communication with teachers. I have a parent now that will email teachers kind of bi-weekly, once a month, depending on what's going on with their student. And, teachers really welcome that. Sometimes if we know things in the guidance office and, we're communicating with parents, but some of that information isn't getting to teachers. Like, that's not great either, because that breaks down the line of communication. So we really want to work together and work with the teachers. So if you're hearing things from your students that either cause you concern or just kind of raise a red flag that you want to get more information about, please feel free to reach out. Sometimes with kids and with high school students, something might have happened in the class and then they come home and report something. And usually the truth tends to lie somewhere in the middle. So it is really important that we're all kind of staying on the same page. And from our office, we will send out emails with different events or things happening. Our guidance website has tons of information about it, on there about, various curriculums we have, job opportunities, scholarships, information for new students. We try to keep our website as up to date as we can. If you're not on Twitter, we have a Twitter account. Mr. Parga, he's active on his Twitter account, our athletic department. I would say most of our high school is pretty active in the Twitter world. So that's a good place to receive communication as well. Mrs. Lodge, can I ask you if there are any questions in the Q&A that we can answer live?
Yeah, absolutely. There are actually a number of questions around the leveling of courses and how students are performing and kind of the differences between levels. So I thought maybe we could just speak to that for a moment. I think, some of the questions come in terms of how are the courses leveled and what are the differences between them. So in freshman year, the level of courses are honors, which is the highest, C1 and C2, so college level 1 and college level 2. And the courses really differ in terms of the pacing, the level of independence that's required in the course. Sometimes it might differ in terms of the homework load because there's additional scaffolding at maybe the C2 level than there would be at the honors level. So students might have more take-home work at the honors level in order to accomplish what they're trying to cover, but all the curriculum content is the same. It's really in the delivery of the curriculum. As students move into their junior and senior years, they also, depending on how they've done in their courses, might have the opportunity to take an AP level course, so an advanced placement course. And that is a bit higher than an honors level course. Students will be in one level for the course of a whole year for the most part, unless they feel like maybe a course is too overwhelming and they need to move down partway through the year. It is pretty atypical for a student to move up a level in the middle of a year. But if come the conclusion of freshman year, your child has performed really well in the courses that they're enrolled in and the levels, teachers might make the recommendation for your son or daughter to move up a level for the following year. Conversely, if they feel like that level has been too challenging for them, they might make the recommendation for them to move down a level for the subsequent year. So teachers are all making those course recommendations for the following year, usually in about February. So in the winter months, they've got about a half a year's worth of work under there. They'll continue to monitor it throughout the rest of the winter and spring to make sure that their original recommendation is still an appropriate one come the end of the academic year. But teachers will make those recommendations in the winter when students go through the course selection process for the following year. So there's certainly room for movement from one year to the next. That was sort of one of the big questions. There is another question in terms of the homework that's required for those. I think I spoke to that a little bit. It's going to vary a little bit from class to class. And again, with the opportunity for students to use their flex time to complete homework as well, you might see that some kids are coming home with very little homework because they're able to use their time effectively during the day. And perhaps others are coming home with more homework because they're using their flex time more effectively for them. And that maybe they're getting extra help during that period of time and doing their homework more at home. So it's going to vary a little bit from child to child. There was another question about about a math lab for those of you who might have older children at the school. Historically, we did offer a math lab as a support resource as well. That is not something that is running this year, but because of my flex, students do have the opportunity to flex in to meet with their math teachers really at any point for extra help either during the school day or after school as well. Those were a good number of the questions that were on there. I'll give it just another minute to see if anyone else has any additional questions, but I'm not seeing too much come through right now. There's just one. Let me take a quick look. So there is another question on here. So that for a lot of these students, this is totally correct. This is the first time they've ever really received true letter grades because they're coming from the standard-based reporting background. The question is, do we feel confident that the children are prepared to handle grading and that they now understand grades? So, that's a great question. I think that, it's an area that there will be continued growth throughout the course of the year. Regardless of whether there were letter grades or standards-based reporting, students have been receiving feedback all along. So the feedback is coming in a different form now, in the form of letter grades versus a numbered scale in the past. So I think the teachers are doing everything they can to make sure that the grading scales are communicated with students and that they have all of that information. And I think it speaks even a little bit to, there was another comment on here earlier that it was just so helpful to see the transcript, because I think a lot of people assume that the transcript, which is the permanent record and what we share eventually with colleges, has the details of every single term throughout high school. And that was a conscious decision that we made a number of years ago when we updated our transcript, that we would only include final grades for students, because we recognize that there are so many ups and downs during the course of the year for students. We want our freshmen to be able to transition in and know that there are some safe places to struggle, and know that that's not going to appear as part of their permanent record for the whole world to see at some point, right? So we're giving them that opportunity to learn as they go along, and know that it's not going to be until that final grade come June, so the average of everything, that appears on their final transcript. So I do think that's something that is being communicated and worked on with students, and we're doing what we can to make sure that they have a good understanding of what their expectations are and what that final outcome will look like.
Mr. Ornberg, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I feel like I wanted to answer the question, do we feel confident that children are prepared to handle the grading and they now understand grades? I think this is part of the evolution of the transition from middle school to high school, regardless of what grading forms or comments are being utilized. We are coming off 18 months of a very challenging time in education, and I think it's completely honest to say that there's certainly going to be some gaps and fractures there, but we are back in person. I think the students, are becoming polished to the expectations of the high school, and I think how things look in June is going to be drastically different than how things are in September. If people remember when they went to college, the first month of college is oftentimes the hardest part because of the transition. And I think that still rings true in the transition from middle school to high school, regardless of what the grading practices were or the format in terms of how feedback was given. But I think that's to Stephanie's point about that outreach and, asking the teachers, do we have those basic foundational elements in place? And I had a junior teacher come down this week about 2 students in chemistry that she felt there was not enough evidence to support that they were appropriately placed, and encouraged them to move down a level. And it was very helpful to have that conversation with the teacher and to hear about those foundational elements. And my hope is now that students are in class full time, they're able to absorb more information as opposed to being home in bed on a Zoom looking up at the ceiling. So I think it takes time. Most transitions do take time, and some will happen faster for others. But I think the expectations of what's happening at the high school are being communicated, and students are living it. And they've never had more time during the week with these 180 minutes to be able to meet with teachers to kind of build off of the feedback they're getting from tests and quizzes and papers.
So I think one of the main things that I hope you all take away from this today is communication, right? I hope that you will continue to communicate with us, the guidance staff. I hope you will feel comfortable and empowered to reach out to your child's teachers if you have questions. We have been in this kind of Zoom world for so long now, but I really think we're going to start getting out of it soon. So if there's, a need at some point where you need to come in and meet with us, we are willing to sit down and have these conversations. We really want to help all of our students find success here, feel comfortable, enjoy high school. It's a fast 4 years, and we really want our students to really just enjoy it and learn a lot. So with that said, the bell just rang. So because we live by the bells, I do need to wrap things up. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have questions, we are here anytime. Thanks a lot.